Hi there. Before we get into it, I just wanted to talk to those of you that are just listening to the audio. So if you're in the car or you're at the gym, anything like that, I appreciate you listening. Thank you very much. But I will say it's worth going to the Substack to take a look at this post. There's a bunch of slides with data, if you're a data person, that'll really show you the context of what I'm talking about this time out. There's still a lot to get out of it by listening, so by all means, don't go anywhere. But I do recommend checking out the actual Substack so that you can see what I'm referring to. And with that, let's get into it. Welcome to Pesto Comics Audio Edition. This is the entry for October 2nd, 2024. Post-Mortem, from Parts Unknown number 1. An in-depth look at the 4th Pesto Comics campaign. We've got an extra long post today as we review the aftermath of the latest campaign. Lots of lessons to be learned as things didn't go entirely as expected. Before we start, I have some updates for some upcoming projects. Pre-launch for Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1. The original plan was to launch Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1 on October 8th, but we're going to push that back by at least a couple weeks to get our ducks in a row. The formatting is nearly done, and I'm going to finalize everything with the 40-plus authors involved in the meantime. This means we'll be able to launch with a completed book that's just waiting to be sent to the printer. You can help right now, for free, by clicking the follow button on the Kickstarter pre-launch page. My Instant Ink comic book podcast co-host, Roberto Villacava, is putting together a cover for this book. It's exactly the pulpy goodness I'm looking for, and it matches the contents of the book quite well. If you're looking for some pulpy sci-fi, noir, romance, and comedy, you'll want to read Big Smoke Pulp. There are so many great short stories in here that you won't be able to put it down. We're going the old school route with a pocketbook paperback edition. It's meant for you to carry around and read it out in the world, or to throw to a friend when you're done and telling them they just have to check it out. I'm excited to get this out there, and I'll of course keep you updated when we land on a solid launch date. Inks are complete for Naked Kaiju Woman. The delay in getting Big Smoke Pulp up and running has also affected Naked Kaiju Woman's release, which was originally planned for mid-November. It's looking like this will go out in January now, allowing for a nice, long ramp-up over the holidays. Rafael Cristiani, the artist of NKW and Stay Cool, plus the variant cover for Unlimited Udo, has delivered all 32 pages, plus an excellent cover for this book already. JP Jordan, the colorist on From Parts Unknown, has also been tapped to color this book. Things are well on their way to having another successful series out there. The best part is that this first book should be completed before we launch on Kickstarter. I'll share the pre-launch page as soon as From Parts Unknown number 1's campaign is closed off. And speaking of, the crowdfunding debrief. A quick preface. This Post-Mortem is partially based on a section of Tyler James' comics launch course. If you're serious about launching your comics on Kickstarter, I highly recommend signing up. It's so much more beyond the course itself, including live twice-monthly coaching calls and a community of other successful creators and crowdfunders to lean on. I've adapted it and changed it for my own purposes here. That said, I'm going to break this all down into 3 parts: backers, dollars, ads, and referrals. If there's something more you'd like to see, let me know and leave a comment. Alright, let's get into it. So, early thoughts. The campaign for From Parts Unknown number 1 was very different from the others I've done so far. I was more comfortable and prepared than I've been with any previous campaign, even with this being the fastest ramp up to launch yet. I knew what I was going to do, how long it was going to take, and I thought I knew where it was going to end up. Crazy Latte Thing Called Love did up my expectations for this book, but when we look into the data, you'll see that I probably should have had a good sense where this would land. There's definitely reasons for all of it. It's really a comparison of apples and oranges. And truthfully, From Parts Unknown has different goals than any of my previous books, being a series. So, let's start by looking at backers. Day 1 made this the second best campaign so far, though it was just barely that. By the evening, we were only $9 Canadian short of funding, and I thought I'd go to bed and wake up funded. Instead, I found the campaign in the same position, only for it to fund an hour later, after the 24-hour mark. The quick launch was a relief, but the pace that it hit after that wasn't too much of a surprise. The pre-launch for every other campaign was months longer than it was for From Parts Unknown. I did the Kickstarter recommended thing of just doing a quick ramp-up and launch, and frankly, I think that backfired a little bit. Not having the hundreds of pre-launch followers that I had with Crazy Latte really made it an uphill battle to get this book out to readers who wouldn't have seen it otherwise. That said, the number of new backers that came to this campaign versus the returning backers was very surprising. But much like the backer count, it didn't hit the heights that Crazy Latte did. Both Luke Maroney and JP Jordan were instrumental in really pushing this campaign everywhere they could. They were probably marketing it harder than I did. These are two new creators that I've never worked with before, so From Parts Unknown was reaching people I didn't previously have access to. As usual, the US dominated where backers were from. However, I don't think I've ever sent packages to Ireland before, and this will be a first. I can assume those came from JP. In fact, one of those is JP. So I don't know if you could fully count that as a surprise. Even though I'm always pushing my Kickstarters here locally in Canada, the backer count is usually from people I know in some way, and not anyone new that I've met at cons, in stores, or online. The difference between digital and physical backers returned to the original state versus what happened with Crazy Latte. I wonder if this is the difference between me not including shipping, or if it's just a difference of the types of backers I had received. Realistically, shipping actually worked out to be a little cheaper this time out, but all-in pricing might have had the psychological edge. For digital, it proves to me that having DRM-free copies for backers and keeping that exclusive to Kickstarter is something that's critical for these campaigns to succeed. As much as I love platforms like Global Comics, I can't survive on the commissions there versus what I make on Kickstarter or even DRM-laden versions on Kobo or Amazon. There's some good news in all this, though. Even though the backer count was the same as Stay Cool this go-around, the per-backer average was much higher than that campaign. This allowed us to double our goal. This is the kind of progress we need if these campaigns are going to continue to flourish. This is with me keeping prices relatively low for individual comics and shipping costs. What made the per-backer count so high was that a lot of backers were buying the Pesto package or the digital Pesto package, which includes the whole back catalog. It just goes to show how important having a library of books is for sustained success on Kickstarter. The best performing pledge levels made it clear that the singular digital copies were most popular. In terms of what brought in the most cash though, the Pesto package, which includes every variant cover of every comic. This managed to get in the top 3 spot just based on how pricey that package has become. I really do appreciate the backers who go for that level, wanting to actually have every copy of what we've made. Another pledge level that isn't listed here, but has done surprisingly well, is the mystery pack. That gets you every #1 issue that we've created, plus a random variant cover from any of the series thrown in the package. I think that much like mystery boxes of old, people just like having a bit of a thrill with what they're ordering, and I'm happy to replicate it going forward. Let's talk dollars and cents. Although the backer count for Stay Cool and From Parts Unknown were the same, the funding completely outstripped the 2 earlier Pesto Comics campaigns. However, Crazy Latte was well out of reach within the second day, where From Parts Unknown mostly followed the trajectory of the previous campaigns. This campaign doubled the funding goal, which is consistent with the past 3 out of the 4 campaigns. However, the funding goal is really just an arbitrary number at this point. These funding goals always aim to cover printing first, and usually do just that and nothing more. I could arguably quadruple the goal and try to hit it, but as you can see here, I probably wouldn't hit the goal, and I don't think multiple failures are going to help that much either. I'm starting to think shorter and shorter campaigns are what are key here. If the average pledge per day stays as high as it is, we could easily hit our funding goals no problem. What dragged this average down over time was that we had a couple days where we had 1 backer, or in one case, we had a minus. Kickstarter campaigns are stressful enough without them being too long. It seems like the shorter a burst, the better the excitement. Along with increasing the sense of urgency, it pushes some backers to support late, which includes a 15% fee for doing so. Fortunately, none of the big ticket backers were dropped this time around, only 2 digital backers. That was a lot more of a concern with Crazy Latte, so it was nice to see that it was just a handful of digital backers that had failed cards, most of which actually fixed it once they received the notification. Shipping prices have gone down slightly, only as I've dropped the insurance from Stallion Express. I tried to submit a claim on one package from Crazy Latte, but the burden of proof is so high that I wasn't able to recoup that cost on the misdelivered package. If I never paid the insurance on any of those packages, the expense saved would have covered the cost of the lost material. Consider it a lesson learned. I've also taken the risk of going with a new printer, recommended to me by a couple local creators. I had a hard time with the previous printer and getting a quote or any feedback on progress, where this new printer, Copywell, has been very friendly and extremely quick to respond. If the product is up to standard, this might be the start of a great working relationship. Mattia's rate on Crazy Latte was a lot higher than the other artists I've worked with. Budget aside, His art is what sold the book further than I had been able to previously. Even with a campaign that did double what this one did, I did better in recouping costs with From Parts Unknown than any project so far. I held back on some of the outside expenses from previous campaigns. On those, I was experimenting a lot with advertising and other kinds of tools, including PR and that kind of thing. Now I'm doing a lot of this work in-house. I'm finding it's making it a lot easier to recoup the costs through these campaigns. If they continue to grow as they are, then I think this becomes a lot more sustainable. That said, losing 2/3 of what you put in right off the bat isn't something that I could do forever. I'm playing the long game, but this trend needs to continue getting better with each launch. Ads and referrals. I had actually launched without doing a Kickstarter video. I didn't see the value in it, but remembering that the Discover page now autoplays videos, I figured I should put something together there. I was able to put together a quick 30-second ad. The short runtime helped up the level of completed views on the video, but I don't know if it actually drove any of the sales. Who knows? I don't mind putting something small together in terms of a trailer, and it did give me something to put on the socials as an ad, though more about that later. In terms of where the referrals are coming from, what I didn't get this time around was all the bonuses that you get for being a project we love. This project didn't seem to cross that barrier, so I didn't get on the homepage as much, nor did I show up on the recommended page as much as I did with Latte or Stay Cool. Therefore, most of the referrals from Kickstarter either came from email or advanced discovery. In other words, if you weren't following me already, you didn't see it. As far as non-Kickstarter referrals go, Twitter still seems to be king. As much as I don't love that platform, it really does bring in the comic readers. I don't know how it manages to continue to do so, but here we are. What's interesting this time is that there's actually a few new players. I have no idea how Bing ended up on here. Blue Sky made an appearance for the first time as well. And although I'm always pushing projects on Substack, I only had a couple backers from here. Plus, it looks like those who did likely just backed the digital level and nothing else. This is my second time using BackerKit Launch, so I was able to compare it with Crazy Latte. Even though my list is much larger this time around, I'm talking double what it was when I launched Crazy Latte, I didn't see the same open rates that I did on that project. It looks like this recession seemed to be across Kickstarter and not just me, so I'm trying not to take it personally. I think there's also a risk in launching a number one in a series when you're an independent creator. Backers want to know that they're actually going to get the complete story. I understand some hesitance here, where my previous campaigns were all one-shots with a total story, beginning, middle, and end. Advertising bombed entirely this time. I had more impressions this time than I had doing any kind of advertising on any of my campaigns. 62,592 impressions, and it brought the cost per click way down. And yet, I had seen 0 backers from that. That's money just down the drain at this point. I'm really going to have to reconsider whether putting any money into advertising is worthwhile. At least with short-term campaigns like this, maybe a project that is sustained and ongoing would be a little more reasonable. Launch experience Q&A. Here's some questions from Comics Launch, meant to reflect on the campaign. How do you feel now that the Kickstarter campaign is over? It's hard not to feel a little disappointed with how this campaign went, given the heights of the one just before it. Again, it was a totally different campaign in so many different ways that I can't be truly upset about it. Still, just seeing From Parts Unknown do just a bit better than the 2 previous to Crazy Latte made me feel like I'm not making quick enough progress. That said, I do feel like being the first in a series means that this can grow over time and do a lot better than that first issue did. What was the best part or high point of this campaign for you? The high point of this campaign was launch day. We didn't quite do it within the 24 hours, but just an hour later we were funded. And that was hard to be upset about. At that point, I thought this campaign was going to do even better than anything else. What was the worst part or low point of this campaign for you? Crazy Latte had the benefit of not having a 0 day. This campaign did a lot worse than that. It was a minus day. That was obviously the low point. I was worried that the campaign was starting to flatline, but fortunately with the typical bathtub of campaign funding, the last couple of days were actually pretty good. How are you different now that this campaign is over? I'll be putting a lot more into how the next campaign is going to be pushed. I'm aiming to get the next issue of From Parts Unknown out in February, and I'll be talking about it at every opportunity that I get. I have another couple campaigns that I'm planning on doing in between, including Big Smoke Pulp and Naked. I'm thinking that the pre-launch conversation needs to be happening at the same rate that I was doing for Crazy Latte. There's a lot of talk about the economy not being great and people holding on to their wallets, So here's hoping that with interest rates coming down and inflation coming down, we'll start seeing a bit of a boom back on Kickstarter. What surprised you most about this campaign? What surprised me most was that the advertising did not work. Seeing how many clicks were coming through and the follower count growing, I couldn't believe how no one actually followed through and purchased anything. It's genuinely shocking to see a zero there. I always knew that advertising for Kickstarters was a challenge given the short time frame you have to do it in, but this was unreal. What's your biggest concern now that the campaign is over? My biggest concern is that the series doesn't grow over time. I do think it will, and I think as people read the story and enjoy it, they'll come back, and hopefully we'll get a whole bunch of new readers along with it. Not to mention those folks that are waiting to see the issues collected before they buy in. I think there's a lot of room to grow, but I do have a fear that it won't happen and this will all be for naught. Launch debrief Q&A. What worked really well during this campaign? Backers really bought into it day one, which I really do appreciate, and made this whole campaign a lot smoother sailing. I can't imagine having to chase the goal halfway through the campaign again. I'm glad to feel like those days are finally behind me. Can you do it again? I better be able to. There's 4 more issues to put out of this series, plus a whole different series in NKW to launch. Plus, beyond comics, there's some other surprise projects that we have coming up next year. This is the game plan going forward. I've had even less luck at conventions, so Kickstarter seems to be where things are going to be most successful for this company. How might you do even better next time? I'm going to be talking about issue 2 and beyond starting today. I'm going to be getting people in on this whole process so that they know this is coming and they're ready for it. Given a bunch of these comics are actually done, they're definitely coming out, so it's just a matter of getting things together. What did backers really seem to resonate with? The mystery pack was one of those reward levels I decided to experiment with and was happy to see it did pretty well. Not only getting a deal with this package, but there's some fun in the mystery. I'm happy backers like this one and I'll definitely be doing it again. What completely bombed? My high ticket services never get a backer. I priced them at a pretty good rate, but I'm wondering if it's even worth the effort, given that there are no bites on it. Instead, the future Pesto package will become the new high-ticket item, as that box is getting bigger and bigger as each campaign goes by. Right now, there's 14 different books. That grows by 2 to 4 every campaign, so soon enough, it'll be considered high-ticket anyway. What will you never do again? Perhaps paid advertising. It doesn't seem to be going well for me at all. Even the last campaign, I barely made my money back. This one, it backfired entirely. That takes away from me actually being able to put money into the books, instead of giving it to these big tech companies that really don't need my extra cash. What were your 3 biggest lessons learned or takeaways from this campaign? 1. Prepare. I had everything I needed for the campaign itself more or less ready to go, but what I didn't have was backers coming with me beyond the couple of weeks of pre-launch. I needed to be talking about this book well before it launched. Frankly, I was going to make the same mistake with Big Smoke Pulp if it wasn't pushed. 2. Getting multiple quotes. This is more relevant for the second part of the Post-Mortem, but getting quotes from printers is a good idea. I could have saved quite a bit if I had asked around more. 3. Maybe being on podcasts actually does help. I actually avoided that this go around as I had just done a whole tour for Crazy Latte and launched the Instant Ink comic book podcast with Roberto and really didn't feel like doing it for this campaign. Maybe I'll actually make the rounds again next time. In summary, I really feel like I'm hitting my stride if I ignore the unicorn that was Crazy Latte. Again, it's all relative. This campaign was the progression I thought I'd get before the last one. Not hitting the same highs this time out did put a damper on the celebrations. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is a series. There's 4 more issues behind this. Hopefully, if you're starting at issue 2, you pick up issue 1. Starting at issue 3, pick up issue 3 plus issue 1 and 2, and so on and so forth. So, patience is the key here. To those of you who back this campaign, I really do appreciate you doing so. It's a story I've been working on for a while. I think it landed somewhere really cool, and it's going to be really exciting. I don't want to spoil what's in issue 1, but I think marketing it will be a lot easier once everybody's seen what the big twist is in the back pages. Maybe that will also help get this out there. We'll just have to wait and see in 2025. But you don't have to wait that long to hear from me again. I'll talk to you next Wednesday. Before I go, let's talk about what's coming up next. October 9th. We're in the middle of it. An argument in favor of crap. October 16th. Be thankful. Happy Canadian Thanksgiving. And October 23rd. don't skimp on the pulp, why I admire the pulp era, and how it influences my work. And that's it for this week. That last one for October 23rd may change depending on when we launch Big Smoke Pulp, but I really do appreciate if you go and follow it now. We really want to launch big with this one. I'm going to keep the goal very, very low, as this is kind of experimental. It's a short story anthology with over 40 authors from all over the world that are providing these very short stories, sometimes even up to 100 words, up to 5,000 words. It really depends on what the story serves and where it went. But I was really looking for stories that were quick, like edge of your seat, like you read them and you feel like you experienced something in a very short amount of time. That's really what I was going for. That's really what I was pushing. I've read maybe 4 times of what's actually in this book, and this book is 500 pages long. So there's quite a bit in there. And again, I'm keeping things really cheap. We're doing a pocketbook paperback edition, so it should be a lot of fun. I really hope you do check it out. And again, if that's not your bag, feel free to share it out and check out what we have coming next. I'm going to constantly be launching things. It's not just Big Smoke Pulp and Naked Kaiju Woman and the next from Parts Unknown. There's going to be a lot more. But yeah, it really depends on these things being successful to get there. So, as always, I really do appreciate you helping out. I appreciate you listening. And until next time, thank you very much. Have a good one.